That brings us to our last lens, kinematics, and how vectors affect kinematics. Well, kinematics are things like position, displacement, change in position, velocity, acceleration. Those are all vector quantities. We're also concerned with time. Of course, time is a scalar. And sometimes we use the magnitude of the velocity or the speed of an object when we're talking about the average velocity. We look at the displacement over time. If we're talking about the speed of an object, the average speed, and I'm just going to use a v with no vector hat on top of it. Then we're talking distance over time. Let's take a simple example where you just run the perimeter of a circle. You start here. You run a circular path and you end up right back where you started. What's the distance you traveled? Well, the distance is 2 pi r, the radius of the circle. What's your displacement? It's 0. Displacement is final position minus initial position. You haven't gone anywhere. You're right back where you started. Your displacement is 0. So your average speed is the distance, the 2 pi r, divided by how much time it took you. And your average velocity in this case would be 0. You didn't go anywhere. Because kinematics rely so heavily on vector quantities like displacement, velocity, acceleration, it's really important when you're using the kinematics lens to tackle a problem that one of the first things you need to do is define your origin and your positive directions. And by defining your origin and your positive directions, that fixes the signs. So if you decide up is positive and your particle moves up, the velocity needs to be positive. If you define up as positive and your particle is going down, you need to make sure you put in a negative velocity because it's moving in the negative direction. If you drop something off of a cliff and you pick up as the positive direction, then your acceleration due to gravity is toward the ground. It needs to be negative, needs to be in the negative direction. If you define down to be positive, then the acceleration due to gravity would be positive. So you need to do this. Define your origin, define your positive directions. You need to do that first thing. Then keep careful track of your signs and make sure you keep your signs straight as you work through the problem.